Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Valeria and this is the Off-Road Ranch. This video, like many others on my channel, is about awareness. Today I'd like to talk about what a habit is, how much habits influence our lives, why they are formed, what are bad habits. I will also consider the difference between a bad habit and an addiction. And most importantly, how to get rid of bad habits and how to introduce new habits. That is, how to improve the quality of your life. What is habit? It is a specific, regular, and automatic action. More broadly speaking, this is a designated limited action that a person performs automatically under certain prevalent conditions. For example, you woke up, you made coffee, you ate, you brushed your teeth, you got into the car, you buckled up, you finished work, you went to the store, and so on. A person is used to perform certain actions under certain conditions, and this comes easy to him. In addition, this action is expected to be performed, since the body has already rebuilt the psyche to perform this action. That is, it works according to an algorithm. This applies to both useful and harmful actions, since both are part of a system of actions that are easy and simple for you to perform. In terms of science, the brain forms certain neural connections that prompt you to perform an action. Some studies suggest that more than 40% of actions we take are habits. In my opinion, this figure is even higher, since for the convenience of life, we have developed algorithms of actions for many situations, and we do not think about them. Our morning is the same. Communication with colleagues is the same. Work is also carried out according to a certain schedule, as well as time after work, which is spent in several specific ways. Go to the store, or go to training, or drink beer, and so on. But these are all the same set of actions. Thus, it turns out that we are guided by habits. We follow learned and reinforced patterns of behavior. Our lives are controlled by actions that we perform by default, often without thinking about whether we need them, whether they are optimized, whether they carry meaning, or whether they are worth changing. Is it good or bad? Both this and that. Habitual actions are the basis for our existence. They provide stability and calm. Those habits that are dictated by physiology, safety, hygiene, health, will remain with you no matter what happens in the world. This can be simple actions, such as going to bed before 11 p.m., doing exercises, washing your hands, eating 3 times a day, and so on. Moreover, I think that you yourself have heard more than once that during stressful situation, repeated boring action help to stabilize the state, relieve tension, gradually return to normal life, and perhaps build a new model of behavior for yourself. If we constantly had to deal with something new, our mind wouldn't be able to withstand such a load. But why is it bad to follow the same actions automatically? A person is not aware. He doesn't understand why exactly and what actions he performs. Perhaps they need to be optimized and revised. He doesn't understand which habits lead to deterioration in life, or doesn't want to accept this and change. Changing long-standing habits is difficult. Constant efforts are required. It is difficult to introduce new activities into the life. We and the brain do not have the habit of changes, of gaining new experiences, of adapting to other conditions. For some, this becomes scary. For others, it becomes uncomfortable. And the person refuses new actions that will help development and become useful in the future. People with automatic actions are easier to use, because regardless of external conditions and how unpleasant they may be, a person will still choose to adhere to a habit rather than they change the algorithm of actions. To change old actions, you need to determine new actions. You need to determine their meaning and benefit of their implementation. Such mental work may already be difficult, and the person will refuse to change. All of this leads to the fact that a person stops developing. And this leads to a loss of interest in life, to a lack of new skills, impressions, acquaintances, to boredom, to unfulfilled life in your own little boring bubble. Why are habits formed? There are many reasons for habits to form. We adopt our first habits from those who raise and educate us, unconsciously learning patterns of behavior, communication, and reactions, and this greatly influences our lifestyle in the future. A person who has been accustomed to eating a balanced diet since childhood is very unlikely to switch to fatty, sweet, and unhealthy foods. For someone who since childhood has seen an example of a lazy adult who drinks beer every weekend, it will be very difficult to quit alcohol and start playing sports on a regular basis. It is also adopted from the outside world: society, friends, colleagues, films, social networks. Observing examples of social norms and standards, being in a society with certain rules and foundations, we begin to follow them. If we approach this consciously to some extent, then we can understand that some standards are stupid or even harmful, but this doesn't mean that we will quit them. For example, certain behavior or reaction to certain communication with a boss, a man, or a woman. Also, a habit arises as a way to optimize life, to do a series of actions quickly, efficiently, and compactly in order to save resources. Another question is whether this optimization was done subconsciously without your involvement, or whether you yourself track the actions and chose the suitable algorithm based on your experience and convenience. An example is getting ready for work, where one way or another you have a procedure to do everything that needs to be done and come to work on time, although not everyone succeeds in it. Habits arises in response to deliberate external influence on us. For example, manipulation, the use of tricks to bypass the functioning of the brain. That is, we unconsciously begin to perform an action that is convenient for another person or subject in the outside world. For example, purchasing certain products that are advertised at reduced prices and placed near the cash register. A habit is developed as the simplest solution and the simplest way to react to something. For example, you came home from work and lay down on the sofa to watch YouTube, regardless of whether you're tired or not, whether you're hungry or not, whether you need to take a shower, or whether you have other tasks. Boredom and the availability of something simple and effortless also lead to the formation of a habit, especially if it is related to the satisfaction of natural needs. For example, cookies or chips as a need for food, Instagram and TikTok as a false way to get new information, masturbation as a need for reproduction. Interest in forbidden things and obsession are the main causes of bad habits. Here we can talk about the lack of an inner corner, the lack of standards of what is good and bad, the inability to solve problems, the uncertainty and instability in life when a person doesn't understand what he wants and why. Also, the reason for the formation of bad habits is the need of approval, that is, the need for acceptance, commitment to a group of people. Another reason is defending independence, that is, committing actions to spite someone. But such habits quickly turn into addiction, and I will talk about this in other videos. And also, the reason for the emergence of a habit is your desire, that is, special conscious actions and efforts on your part to instill certain habits that you need. This process, unlike all of the above, requires long-term efforts, the development of discipline and willpower. What is a bad habit and how does it influence? This is the same regular, specific, and automatic algorithm of actions. However, it negatively affects a person's life. It is much easier to get it, since most often it doesn't require effort, and it is more difficult to refuse it. And not only because psychologically and physiologically you're accustomed to repeating the same action in certain conditions, but also because of society, since people often converge in their lifestyle, and habit is a part of life. A bad habit worsens your health, deteriorates your appearance, leads to illness, negatively affects your psychological state, worsens relationships with people, poses a threat to other people or the environment, worsens your financial situation, interferes with your development, weakens willpower and discipline, controls your life. Since without doing a certain action, you will not feel stability and calm. Bad habits lead to a lack of awareness, since the power of action is stronger than the power of refusal. Strong unpleasant feelings can even provoke other problems. For example, fear of loss of stability, fear of loss of pleasure, fear of prohibition, which, on the contrary, provoke an attempt to maintain the habit if the person doesn't understand why he wants to give up the habit. The desire to perform an action automatically seems to turn off the part of the brain that is responsible for logic, analysis, evaluation, and decision-making, forcing the part of the brain that is responsible for animal reflexes to dominate. Habit deprives you of free will and freedom of choice. Bad habits include many patterns of behavior, including gambling, alcohol consumption, lack of sleep schedule, sedentary lifestyle, unbalanced diet, disorder in the home, clothes, hygiene, inadequate reaction to the external environment, procrastination, foul language, lying, uncontrolled spending of money, sitting on social networks, imitation of work activities, and many different habits, from those that will not lead to serious deterioration to those that will lead to addiction. What is the difference between a habit and an addiction? The most important thing is that you can forget about a habit if you change the circumstances and environment. This doesn't happen with an addiction. That is, if you are out of context and you have no need to perform an action, this is a habit. If conditions have changed, but the desire and need to do something still remains, this is an addiction. Both are rooted in the brain and body. Both give a feeling of stability. But habits are more neutral. Despite the deep formation to the point of atomicity, most often habits are needed for certain tasks and have different shades. They control our lives. However, when the situation and environment change, or if we wish, we can change our habits by making efforts every day. For example, you changed your job and moved to another city, and now your lifestyle has changed. You get up at a different time, spend different time on transport, go to a different gym after work, and so on. That is, you change your routine. And if necessary, you can track the set and order of your actions and introduce new actions into your life. Despite the fact that habits control our life, the main thing is that they have formed only an algorithm of actions, and you can break it, although this is not always easy. Do you know people who have been saying for several years that they will start running from Monday mornings, but don't? Or people who say on Sunday that they will never drink again, but forget about this promise on Friday evening. So it is a very strong habit of performing the same actions at the same time under the same conditions. It is stronger than willpower and the desired results. But you are still not dependent on the program at the biochemical level, and in the case of strong need, you can change the ritual. Addiction, in turn, differs from habit in that you are its slave. Literally a slave, because even if you want to get rid of it, then most likely you will not be able to do it on your own, and sometimes you will never be able to do it at all. A constant habit doesn't lead to a feeling of joy and satisfaction. You brush your teeth because you need to brush your teeth. Addiction is based on the fact that in order to feel good, to feel normal, you need to stimulate your sensations and get satisfaction. Addiction works at the hormonal and endocrine level, at the level of receptors and neurons, and your desire to quit it very often cannot influence their actions. You cannot control your addiction. Anyway, only you are to blame for the fact that you have formed an addiction. But I will talk about this later, and now I will continue the topic of habits. How are habits formed? A habit is characterized by the fact that, when performed, a person doesn't expect reward or encouragement. That is, the habit doesn't depend on impulsive desire or expectation of reward. That is the influence of dopamine. It depends on strong neural connection. I do it because I have to do it. However, initially, a habit arises due to the fact that after performing the action, we receive satisfaction, positive feelings, and a sense of achievement. This encourages us to repeat the action, and then again and again. Further, the feeling of joy and positive emotions decrease. But the connection and the habit have been already developed, and if you try to quit it, unpleasant sensations will arise, since the body doesn't want to lose this brick of stability. Therefore, developing bad habits is much easier and faster. For example, you get pleasure from satisfying basic needs, from tasty, fatty and sweet food instead of a quality diet, from lying in a warm bed instead of getting up quickly, from the approval of a bad habit by friends, and so on. This is based on human evolutionary history and is most often associated with security and acceptance into the pack. How to get rid of bad habits? What to do if you want to get rid of a bad habit? Understand the harm. Very specific. Understand lost health, time, opportunities. Understand brain degradation, deterioration in socialization skills, lost time for skill development, and so on. To do this, first of all, you need to observe yourself, your actions. You can also watch videos, read articles, but do not intimidate you too much. Understand that you are held back by external conditions. Change the context. It is not for nothing that it is believed that when a person moves, he radically changes his life. This is a much easier way to form new habits and lifestyle. A person recreates a routine, getting up, doing things, working, and so on. And it is much easier for him to decide what he will do with his free time. He is no longer held by his surroundings. That is the reason a person doesn't want to return to the past conditions. There was a different existence, a different perception for oneself, other things that the person didn't like but couldn't give up. The main thing is that his bad habits do not return when returning to past conditions. However, to this point, he can become more conscious and disciplined. Since not everyone had the opportunity to move, change your conditions at least minimally. Try new routes, food, new hobbies. Set yourself tasks as the game, not as a requirement. I will talk a little about how to develop new habits further. Now many people have problems with concentration and maintaining attention. Many are given treatments and medicines. But you need to understand that this doesn't mean that you cannot work on your own every day. Train your skills, strive to repeat important actions, follow a schedule. We are all humans. Regardless of your personality, you can improve every day. And this will smooth out your symptoms and improve your well-being. And the most effective way to get rid of bad habits is to replace them with good habits. How to form a new habit? The habit formation mechanism consists of 4 stages. You want something, you initiate this action, you repeat the action, you strengthen the connection between circumstances and action. You must immediately understand that the more difficult thing is to start taking action. Simply understanding what is good and what is bad will not help you, and you won't be able to force yourself to perform action. First of all, you need to understand why you need a habit. What is the point of specific regular action? For you personally, there might be dozens of reasons. Satisfy curiosity, gain new knowledge, receive new experience, make your morning, day, evening routine more organized, get abs and good posture, and at the same time to improve bowel function, detoxification, hormonal level, and your mood. What happens when you have a reason to create a habit? When you set a goal, you create motivation. When you perform an action, you receive encouragement. And although the developed habit works without reward, in order to instill it, you shall act with the feeling of satisfaction for the completed task. If you receive a positive response, you repeat the action again and again. Further, this feeling of satisfaction goes away, but the action remains. How to enjoy an action if it is unpleasant? You don't want to do exercises in the morning. You don't want to douse yourself with cold water. Even if you really don't like doing push-ups, after 5 push-ups, you will realize that in a day you will do 7 push-ups, and then 10, and then 100. Cool? Yes. And you will enjoy your current activities. At first, you can pour only your feet for a couple of seconds, and then immediately turn on a hot shower, and gradually, over time, move on to a full-fledged contrast shower. And you are already great for doing a little more every day. Moreover, some procedures are too stressful for the body, and not only you, but also your body needs adaptation in order to improve your well-being and not to get sick or get inflammation. Do not forget that in order to develop a habit, we need the same conditions. We need certain actions, signals, environments that will be associated with implementation of the further action. For example, prepared sport clothes, a book on the nightstand, dishwashing liquid on the kitchen table that you will definitely notice, and so on. And if you decide to go jogging, but during your first attempts you will switch the alarm clock, then after time you start going for a run for 10 minutes and only in good weather. Then you start running longer and more often. Then you cannot stop running in the morning, because you have to. Both psychologically and physically, you and your body expect the action to occur naturally. This is how willpower is gradually activated and discipline is developed. How to keep a habit? Firstly, think through and understand what you do and how you do it. For example, plan a schedule, prepare the necessary things. Secondly, repeat over and over again. Do not give up, try to do it again. Do not blame yourself, just try to repeat it. Over time, you will succeed. When you change your activity, schedule, environment, workload, hobbies, your lifestyle changes. Some habits may disappear, new ones may be difficult to form. What to do? It is advisable to anticipate this, plan in advance, and reintroduce the habit. And also create previous signals. For example, a similar schedule with sequential actions. Healthy and simple food in the refrigerator so as not to overeat on chips. And so on. How long does it take to form a habit? Actually, it is not 21 days. In fact, there is no answer and no exact numbers. The duration of habit formation depends on many factors of its implementation. Time of day, your fatigue, physical condition, complicity of the habit, urgent matters, changing conditions, and so on. It is a long process, not 21 days. Moreover, if you think that 21 days is enough, then after this time you will stop trying. After all, the habit has been already formed according to false data, and you will degrade in this direction and worsen your discipline. It may take 6 months to form a habit. Is it a lot? Do not count the time. You do it not for the sake of time, but for the sake of another result. In addition, the previous year flew by very quickly, and this is a whole 365 days. This year will fly by just as quickly, so do not worry about how long it will be. Due to the volume of tasks, lack of time, disorganization, there might be chronic fatigue and constant anxiety. In this state, a person has little strength to form new habits, but it is still necessary. One of the most important habits is the highest quality of organization of your life. Making a schedule and learning to stick to it, keeping track of the time you spend on actions, are also habits that will improve all areas of your life and allow you to continue to act in the direction you want and achieve your goals. There are separate videos on how organize your life and food. I hope they help you. It is also very important to stay in silence, without extraneous noise and sounds, without talking or distractions by others, preferably for an hour a day. Think that you cannot commit that much time. It seems that a whole hour of silence in the modern world is a lot. But this habit will give you a peace of mind. It will give you an understanding of how you live your life. It will give you an understanding of what problems you really care about and what you want. If you cannot commit to an hour, commit to 30 minutes, 15 minutes. Track your thoughts while cleaning, cooking, those things that you do automatically, without thinking. In fact, the most important thing is not psychology, not exercises, not advice, but whether you have meaning in the life. Not only meaning in the habit, but your global understanding of how you see yourself and the world around you. Based on this, you can already determine what actions, habits, skills, environments, resources you need. The most important thing is to remember and adhere to your main task, your meaning which you define for yourself. People often try to find the meaning of life, but it doesn't lie anywhere on the shelf or in a store. Each person determines the meaning of life for himself. Believe in yourself, work hard, and you will succeed. And remember that there are still a small number of people left in the world who will sincerely support you in your development. It was Valeria, the Off-Road Ranch. I wish you all the best and see you soon.